Hey guys, and welcome back to the Ground Up Show. My name is Matt Diavella, and today I'm sitting down to talk with Jason Zook. Over the years, Jason has come up with some genius ideas that have become wildly successful. Like the time he earned over $1 million wearing t-shirts, or when he legally sold his last name to jasonheadsets.com. He actually did that. But what I like most about Jason, it's not his creativity, it's the fact that he can be open and transparent about these experiences and actually talk about the downsides and how they inevitably led to his burnout.
What is it all for? Like, what is all this hustle actually for? Like, what is it getting you to? Because if you get to whatever this arbitrary finish line is that you finally get to, but you're miserable, you're overweight, you're super stressed out, you really resent the thing that you've created because now all you've done is work on it and it's not even fun anymore. Like, what was the point?
On this episode, we question how much is enough and explore the dark sides of the hustle. Enjoy the show. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It is so nice to have you here. I've been trying to get you on the podcast for a while, but...
Well, we live like too far away. That's the problem.
So far, it's like 2 hours. Is it 2 hours?
Yeah. It'd be like an hour and 30 without traffic because Southern California, and you have to complain about traffic.
There's always the traffic, though.
Yeah.
You're going to...
Well, truthfully, I was waiting for you to get to a certain level. Like...
That's so good. That's true. Because when I first asked you to come on, it would have been you doing a favor for me.
Yeah. I was like, nah, man. No.
Yeah.
You have to have at least 100,000 subscribers. No,
Yeah. Once I hit 100,000 on YouTube, you're like, all right, Matt,
No.
we could talk now.
I remember when the first episodes came out because we had been introduced before that. I think just through the minimalists, and I was like, oh man, like I love the show. Like it's refreshing to actually see someone take the time to do all of this setup and film it and record it and in person, because so often these things are just through Skype or whatever, and I've done plenty of these, and you're just like, it would be so much better if you're just with a person and you can talk to them. So it was cool that we lived 2 hours away as opposed to when you started this. You lived a whole different place away that we couldn't have done that together. So
yeah, that's true. You have a lot of experience podcasting.
I have a good amount. I've definitely put out some podcasts.
How many, dude? You've done so much stuff.
I have.
We're gonna talk about all the stuff you've done.
Yeah,
that's like your website.
Yeah.
Jason does make stuff or does stuff.
Jason does stuff.
JasonDoesStuff.com. Cool.
Yeah.
We just got that plug in real quick.
Yeah, it's true, and it got to a point a couple years ago where it was really like hard to define what I was doing because I was just trying to dabble in all different things, making a podcast, writing a book, doing this, these crazy projects before that, and it was just like, what encapsulates all this? Is like, I just do a lot of stuff, and it's mostly because I'm curious and I'm interested and I like creating things. And for some reason, and I think this is a recurring theme in my life, the domain had not been purchased that I thought of, which was jasondoesstuff.com, and I was like, well, all right, that's now my thing. That's like where all my stuff lives online. So
that's great. I tried to get mattmakesvideos.com. It was taken.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. A lot of dreams die because domains are taken.
Yeah, it really does. And then you're like, oh, do I go the .co or do I go the .net? That's a whole...
.net.
You really could just...
Super dirty.
Yeah.
Leo Babauta and his ZenHabits.net.
Is he ZenHabits.net?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
See, and that's the funny thing. I think we, as the people who like buy those URLs and what have you, we're like, oh, this is such a joke. No one's going to... Like, how big is Leo's audience and site? And like, it doesn't matter at all. Those are the like self-limiting beliefs we have of like, oh, I need this great domain or this great thing. It doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter. Does it? Does it matter?
I don't know.
I feel like it matters, but a little bit, but not a lot. Where
does it matter to
you? He also started so early, and maybe that's I don't know if that has much to do with it.
Yeah.
But I think it's like maybe like a 10% difference or something, right?
Yeah.
I think it may give you a little boost, but in the long run, if you're putting out shit on ZenHabits.net, it was clear that he separated himself with his writing.
Yeah. And I think that's the creator's dilemma in a lot of different ways, is like the things that hold you up are not things that should hold you up. Like you should just buy whatever domain you can, do the thing that you're going to do, make it as good as you can, and then let all that stuff sort itself out. Because you can buy a different domain later. You can change the name later. Like Jason Does Stuff is a horrible domain and name to build a business around. Because it means nothing. It has, like, you don't identify with. You're not like, well, I'm not a Jason. Like, I don't. Like, what am I doing? Why would I care?
Jason, yeah.
Like, I don't belong here. But it doesn't matter because the content is interesting or different or unique or good, and it stands out, and then everything else kind of falls in place for you. And then you can just change it, which is what my wife and I are doing, and we're moving in a whole different direction. So,
exactly, you can always change it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's hard for me to look at a name that I've created in the past and be like, oh, I'm really like happy with that. I've like had 8 different company names for the same company. It's just constantly changing where it's like
Black Box Productions?
Films.
That's what
actually,
it is.
And then, I think it was Productions, and then it went to Films,
Yeah.
and then it was Catalyst, and it started out as Matt Diavella, videographer.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. I'm just... The naming of things is pretty tough. It seems like you take such like a simple, straightforward approach to naming things.
Yeah.
Where it's the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wear your shirt. We're not going to get into that yet because that's a long story.
That's fine.
Because I felt like if I cue that, you were going to just go off
go
and
into
run.
autopilot, just straight into autopilot. No, and it's funny. I think the literal domains, the literal business names, it's part of just me going, this is the least important part of this. The most important part is that I do the thing well, and I make the thing as good as I can. So like, don't invest the time with like, what's a cool name? What's it? It's like, that doesn't matter. Like, let me get the thing that can get the job done, and then move forward and create content that actually makes a difference, or like really stands out or does something kind of unique. So.
Right. So the podcast started at some point.
Yeah.
We'll figure out where to.
I figured it started like when I walked in.
Yeah,
like
yeah. That's why there's GoPros mounted on the wall.
You made me put on that helmet, that like weird helmet.
yeah. But the one thing that I want to talk about, and we talked a little bit about this last night when we were out for dinner and drinks, was this idea of like hustle, and there's like this huge mentality and push and almost like a movement of young creators to hustle. Like until they work themselves to the bone, they work themselves dry. They don't get any sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I think is at a detriment to a lot of people's well-being and happiness.
Yeah.
I think that there is an element of hustle that is required. And I mean, even in launching your most recent site and project, it's 10, 12-hour days sometimes, working on the weekends. There's a lot of work you have to put in.
Yeah.
But there's a line you need to draw. So to start the podcast off, that's the question I want to ask. Like, how much is enough? How do you know what's enough and when you should, put the pen down or stop editing?
Yeah, I love that word enough. I mean, I think we're probably going to come back to that a lot in this because that's been a huge turning point just in my life of realizing like enough in a lot of different areas. Money, all of the things that you're creating, the time that you spend, the decisions you're making, the things that you're chasing. But specifically for hustle, I mean, I used to be a hustle bro 110%. Like I had a shirt that said hustle. I had probably a coffee mug that said hustle. I championed working 14 hours a day. Like if you didn't work long enough, you weren't working hard enough. Like that was the way that I always thought about it. And that's like the Gary Vee mindset. And that's all these things that you hear and you see on Entrepreneur Magazine, and so put in like 2 years of work and they didn't see their family or whatever. And you start to realize like, and I got this phrase from my wife, is like, what is it all for? Like, what is all this hustle actually for? Like, what is it getting you to? Because if you get to whatever this arbitrary finish line is that you finally get to, but you're miserable, you're overweight, you're super stressed out, you really resent the thing that you've created because now all you've done is work on it and it's not even fun anymore. Like, what was the point? And so for me, I realized that like I went through a phase, and we'll talk about the I Wear Your Shirt thing, but I made 889 videos daily before YouTube vlogging was the thing, while hosting a 1-hour live video show on top of that, and running a business where I managed 365 sponsors in a year, plus having a life of some, like 2 hours a day of a life, and then no sleep at all. And I wore it as a badge of honor. Like I would just tell people like, this is what you have to do. And I think that, to your question of like, what is that balance? Because I do think you need it to start something. I think you need consistency a ton. Like consistency is one of the things that will set you apart from anybody else, because most people just won't show up. They won't show up in creating things constantly. They won't show up in delivering the thing they said that they're going to sell you or whatever. They won't show up just in continuing to put out their work, right? Like we all see those people who are like, I'm going to start a vlog, and it's like 7 episodes and then a YouTube channel is dead for a year. You're like, oh, cool. That's not a vlog. That's 7 episodes that nothing, like congratulations, you didn't do it. But consistency is where you start to really cut your chops and your skills and the things that you work on. And then what I think is really important, and I've found that just really matters to me, is understanding like, what's the schedule that works for your life that you want? You know, and not just building this life of like all these hours that you can work, but instead saying, I want to work like 4 or 5 hours a day. I want to work maybe like 20 or 30 hours a week. And whatever I get done is enough. And if that's all I can produce, then that's all I'm going to do. And for the most of my life, that's what it is. And for sometimes like now, it's a little bit more because I'm building a new thing and that takes more hours. But super long-winded answer. But I just think that there's an ebb and flow to it. But you have to be able to say like, I'm not going to overwork myself just because that's what people say you need to do to be successful, because you don't.
Right, but there's always going to be more work that needs to be done. And you, especially as somebody who's, say, a content creator, if you're creating original content, it's even different from the freelance world. Because when I was a freelancer, I would say I worked a lot less. And I made a lot more money. It's easier to make more money than $0. I'm not making anything now. But like I was working like 3 hours, 4 hours a day sometimes as a freelancer, because I would just get all the work done that I had. And then I could, focus on just my life, my personal life, and my well-being. But say if you're, working as a content creator, you can always produce more videos. You can always do more podcasts. You can fix your website, your design, change your name. There's so many different things that you can do that is, how do you put limits on yourself? How do you make sure that you don't just keep going? Because, we, as creators, we love the process and we love a lot of what we do, and like getting into that state of flow. How do you stop that state?
Yeah. And I think part of it is you just have to listen to your body at certain times. Like you really have to be in tune with, hey, you know what? Like, am I starting to feel sick, or am I starting to feel like I'm not getting a lot of sleep, or am I starting to feel like I'm sacrificing my actual life to do this thing that I'm doing? And also, am I seeing a return that I want to see? Not vanity metrics, right? Because I think that's the thing that drives so many creators, and it drove me for a long time, was like, how can I get more views? How can I get more followers? How can I get more and more and more? And all that stuff was really not personally fulfilling. Because what happens, I mean, it's the hedonic treadmill, right? Like, it's just the next level, it's the next level, and it's all these things. Instead of just going, I created what I wanted to create this week. And I think that's really when you do this a lot, when you start to put out a lot of content, you start to say, you know what, I want to do 3 videos a week, and that's what I'm going to do. And whatever it takes to get those 3 videos done, I'm not going to film 3 more just because I have more time. Instead, I'm going to enjoy the time that I have, the free time that I've afforded myself, and just live my life and kind of enjoy that. And I just think that there's something where every single person has to realize, like, man, yeah, I could work more hours, but I just am not going to, because I need to live my life. Like, I need to separate just being in tune to social media all the time and all these different things. And you just step back and go, what am I doing this for? Oh, I'm doing this so that I can work from home and I can spend time with my family, or I can take trips, I can travel, I can do other things. I do think it is just really interesting how a lot of us leave the 9-to-5 world, or you leave the client world, and that's what people think is like, kind of a prison, if you will. But then you build your own business and you build like this career dungeon around yourself, right? You go from 9-to-5 to 9-to-9, right? Like, it's just you wake up and you go to sleep and you worked the entire time before. As opposed to before that, you like at least came home and had a break for a few hours. And I think that that's just something where I think all the lessons that you can possibly learn as an entrepreneur, someone could tell you 100 times over, but until you do it yourself, you're never going to learn the lesson. So for most people, it's like you have to find your breaking point or your stopping point of going, yep, that's too much. Now I need to scale back, and there's really no other way around that. Like, I could tell you too, I'm blue in the face, like, you're working too much. But you're not going to stop until you realize, like, oh, this was too much. Like, it's not scalable. I need to, pull back a little bit.
When you say you create a certain amount of content you want to create, or a certain, I guess whatever your plan is for the week, where you're going to I'm going to do this many blog posts, I'm going to, put this many Instagram posts up. What about when life gets in the way, where you have travel, you have plans, maybe you didn't plan ahead thoughtfully enough? Should we grind it out for a short period of time, or let those things go and just say, you know what, 1 week without connecting with my audience and making a post isn't going to be the end of the world? Have you found for you, and talking to your audience and doing this, for over 10 years or so, is the audience forgiving if you don't contact them for a couple weeks?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's life shitting on your face, if we're being honest. Like, that's what happens. Like, those are the moments where you really have to kind of like figure out, can I get this work done, or do I actually have to take care of life things or things that are going on? And to answer your question directly, yes, 100% your audience forgives you, because you're now being a real human. You're a vulnerable person. You're a person who's not bulletproof, who can't just continue to create content all the time. And that creates relatability, because now someone goes, oh, Jason and Matt are normal people. They can't just keep being robots forever and constantly creating this content. They also have to take a break. And I think that those things are just so important. And I think creativity also needs time. It needs space. So you get in these modes where you're constantly creating things, whether it's for social media or for blog content or for video or whatever. And the more that you consistently do it and you don't take breaks or you don't have changes, because I think, like I said, consistency is great in the beginning, but you don't necessarily need it to continue forever, is then you take a break and you come back and guess what? You're super refreshed. And if you really love what you do, this is how I always think about like recharging the creative batteries. Like I'll take a break for a week from doing something like writing or creating anything, and I'm itching to get back to it. And to me, that's the feeling of I have recharged my creative batteries. Because the first couple of days, I'm just super happy I have a break. But then by the end of it, I'm like, I kind of want to get, I want to get back. Like I'm hungry for it. And I think those are such necessary things. And for me, that's really been like social media detoxes have been so huge, which we can go into for sure. But that type of stuff, I just think for creating stuff that really matters, you need those breaks, and you need to be unapologetic when life happens and those breaks kind of come at you and you didn't even want to take them, because those are the moments where you have to go, wait a second, I work for myself. Like this is my life. I'm creating all of this. Why am I going to force to get back into it? Like that's the whole reason why I'm not working for a boss, because I don't have to go in when I'm sick. Like we go in when we're sick, when we work for ourselves, more than you did when you worked for a boss, and it just doesn't make sense all the time.
Yeah, we are way harder on ourselves than we are on other people.
Yeah. We're our own worst bosses. Like anybody who's had a bad boss in their entire life and then works for themselves, like we're such worse bosses. Yeah, we're so bad.
I think by nature we are, and we tend to be very hard on ourselves, and we're very impatient and just want. We always feel like, oh, gotta keep making that stuff. Even if I put out something that did really well and was successful, I got to do the next thing. I wrote a really great book. I got to write my next great book. It's always what's gonna happen next, and never stepping back and saying, okay, let me just enjoy this process. Yeah. And I think that's like the factory settings.
Yeah.
But we can also reprogram that, and we can step back and switch it up. I think one thing that was interesting to see from you was the fact that you did that social media detox for 30 days to like really truly take a step back from it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, which is almost unproductive and distracting in a way. So I'm curious about what you learned from that experiment.
Dude, the social media detox has been probably one of the most enlightening things I've ever done in my life, because I really strongly believe that social media is the next great addiction. Smoking, alcohol, gambling, social media is right up there, because you get the same response. You get the same dopamine responses when you're liking things, sharing things, whatever people are liking and commenting, as you do with drugs and alcohol. And it's been proven through all these studies. But the more important thing to me is it's the same answer when you ask someone like, hey, can you quit Facebook for a week? And you're like, of course I can. I just don't want to. That's the same answer for alcohol, smoking, like all these things. It's the exact same responses. And so for me, I felt in 2014 was the first time I did a 30-day break. Like I would sit on Facebook for 4 to 6 hours a day, looking at my message to post and going, what could I post that would get a lot of people to like it? That sucks. Like when you get to that place, like you're no longer in control of how you're using that platform. That platform's controlling you. And I was like, I have to take the power back in some way from all of these platforms. And so I basically just said, I also really wanted to test at that time, like my businesses were going through a huge transition. And I was really wondering, like, do I need Facebook or just social media in general to have a business? Because I kind of felt like I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't have a business without social media. And so I took this break, and it was so weird in so many ways. But I did a 30-day journal, so I wasn't like writing live. I would just write in like a journal that I had on my computer. And it was super weird because I had all this time. Like it was amazing, all the moments where I had time. It was also really scary, a lot of the things. So like I would pull up at a red light the first couple of days, and I would grab at my phone, swipe it open without looking, click where Facebook was, and it wasn't there anymore. And so like I would tap like 3 times just instinctually, and then I would look down and be like, oh, like I felt gross. Like I felt almost like, what is going on? And you realize when you remove those things, like, holy crap, that's instinctual. Like my hand knows where it is without even thinking. It's a involuntary movement. And so removing Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram wasn't very big at the time then, but even now, as I still do these twice a year, it is the most clarity of thought, during those times. It's like everything recalibrates for me. I get this whole refreshed creativity. It's like I was talking about recharging those batteries. Like I'm itching to get back to stuff by the end of 30 days, but I'm also really excited because it's like I've taken control of these platforms. I'm not sitting there staring at them. I'm not letting the news feeds distract me. And I'm actually fully taking a break, not just like 8 or 12 hours out of the day, like breaking up the time that I use them, because that's typically what I do now. It's like, no, I'm 30 days without completely. And then I can go back and go, yeah, it's fine. I missed some stuff. I didn't post things. And guess what? Everybody's still here. Nothing really changed.
So if we're taking the comparison to the drug and alcohol, I would say then how, when you come back, are you able to more mindfully consume alcohol, right? Like when you come back, I mean, obviously if you have a true addiction, and that's obviously there is a difference where, drugs and alcohol are detrimental. I mean, I think they're both very bad for your well-being.
I strongly believe, and I think we'll start seeing a lot of this, especially the generation that has grown up only with these things. Like you and I grew up where if you wanted to hang out with someone, you couldn't just flip up on your phone and search and find people to hang out with on your phone. Like see into their lives, know what they're doing, like have a connection with them. We had to like ride our bikes to each other's houses and be like, hey man, what are you doing? And like find out and do all those things. That doesn't exist for kids growing up now. So I think like where we sit right now, yeah, we probably aren't having the same impact that social media would have as like alcoholism. And certainly I don't want to compare like the extremes, right? Like someone's addiction to social media is not the same as someone's like really addictive thing to alcohol and other things. But it's going to get there because these are things people can't detach from. Their entire self-worth is tied to. So you have like so many people that are tying everything of theirs into this. And I was one of these people. This is the only reason why I feel like I can say this. My entire identity was tied to who I was online. And I felt like if I didn't post or I wasn't there, it was like I wasn't even doing anything interesting. I wasn't an interesting person. It's like, that is such a messed up thought. And I think that, again, like we're just at this interesting place where social media therapists are starting to become a thing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I've been saying this for years. Like I was like, I see this coming. It's starting to be a thing. Like people need help to break from it. And we're on this cusp where I think in the next couple years, it's just going to be a huge shift in our society where it's going to be really hard for people to let go. And it's going to be hard for people who their entire life they've been on these platforms.
So how do we then better use social media after that 30-day detox? Because like the detox is one thing, and that's certainly helpful. But I imagine once it's very easy to fall right back into the same patterns that you were once in.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I want to be clear. Like I can't speak to alcoholism and the struggle that people go through with that. I don't have that type of addiction, thankfully, and I don't think that many people who are alcoholics like want to come back to alcohol and have control of it. Although maybe some do, and they want to be functioning, drinkers and whatever that means. Again, like I have no bearing on that. I just really believe these things are going to be on the same level. But when I come back to it, I then get super intentional about how I use it. So then I go, okay, I check Instagram twice a day. Because, man, I would love to scroll through Instagram all day long because it's great. It's a curated feed of beautiful things. It's really awesome. It's really interesting. But I don't want it to control my life. I want the time that's taking up to be creating things of my own, to be exploring, experimenting other things. And so you really do just become intentional. You take that break and then you come back and you go, okay, how do I get back in the driver's seat of using these things? And what does that look like? And for me, after the second time I did a social media detox, that was quitting Facebook completely. Because I was like, there's no way. There's no like only check it twice a day. It doesn't happen for me. I couldn't do it. I just was like 3 hours all of a sudden had gone by. I'm like, well, I just scrolled through 1,000 people's lives, And then like I felt bad about myself at the end of it, both for the guilt of doing it, but then also comparing myself to all these people who were doing amazing things that I wasn't doing. And I just was like, I can't be here anymore. Like I can't do it. So I think that control becomes really important. And I would imagine a lot of people who are listening or watching this probably don't feel like they're in control, but they haven't even ever thought of that. It's like, can you take a break? I wrote that post, that journal that I talked about, is the highest ranking article that I have that I've ever written. Last year, it brought in almost 200,000 people to my website. It's the #1 result if you search social media detox. And I didn't plan for any of that stuff. I just wanted to do this and see what the experiment was. I get emails from people daily, weekly, that are like, I could never do this, or I tried it and I got like 1 or 2 days and I just had to go back. And like I have the data. Like I'm seeing these people, these normal people, everyday people who are like, I can't stay off of it.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
And that's why I believe I do have a little bit of a say to say, like, to me, this is the next great addiction. Because I see these people who are emailing and I just, like, those are the same words. Those are the same problems. Those are the same sticking points. And I just think if anybody out there, is feeling that way, it's like, just take a weekend off first. Like, you don't have to go 30 days because it's hard. And then take a week the next time. And then take 2 weeks. And then work yourself out. And you start to see like people. So then I have the other spectrum of people who have done their own 30-day detox. And they're like, Jason, this is so great. Like, I realized like I just deleted Instagram. Like I was only following like the Kardashians and like all this stuff. And, like, that's not my life. Like I shouldn't be following that stuff. And then they just deleted it. And they're like, now I have more time for my kids. And it's like, wow. That's crazy to think about. Like, you didn't have time for your kids because you were on Instagram. Like, that's kind of mind blowing. So
it's such an addiction. When I think about, like, even I would get into this habit too, where like I don't watch much TV now, but like you're watching TV, the commercial comes on. First, you pick up your phone, and then because you're like, I need something. There's no lag time. There's no time where we can just sit still in our own thoughts.
Yeah,
we can't even watch a commercial. Like we need to constantly be stimulated. And it's kind of scary to see where it's going, because these companies are becoming more and more powerful, and they're becoming better at understanding how we use it. Like, they're getting so much data on how people use it, and they're also benefiting. A benefit to great content creators like us. We put stuff out there, and they will give us more viewership if people watch more of our videos. If people are on our website a little bit longer, our SEO is going to go a little bit higher, which it's kind of a difficult loop to break.
Yeah. And I think part of that for us as content creators, you really have to say, again, like, I'm controlling my use of this platform. So I'm posting 3 videos per week. I'm not watching 30 videos a day anymore. Like, I'm here to post. I'm here to share. I'm here to like produce things. And then I'm moving on with my life. And the same with using Instagram or whatever. And that's why I use it twice a day, because I want to be there. I want to respond to people. Like, I'm not super popular on Instagram. I don't have a big following on Instagram, but I do have some, and I like interacting with those people, and that's where they hang out. So I do have to show up there to some degree if I want to stay engaged with the community. And I think that stuff is kind of important to realize, like, well, okay, do you want to facilitate a community? Do you want to show up and be there with an audience? We were talking about that at dinner last night. Like, how much time do you spend responding to things? Like, for me, I respond to everything, but I'm also at a really nice enough level of an audience where I can. I don't want to get to a place where I'm 10x where I am now, because then I can't respond to everybody. And then I feel like, just like a jerk who like is too popular to respond to people. Like, I don't want to get to that point. I knew what that was actually, like, before with my I Wear Your Shirt project. Like, I couldn't respond to everything. I didn't have enough hours in the day. And it actually made me feel really bad. Like, I didn't feel good being at that point. And it was just something I had to deal with and wrestle with. But I was going to say on the phone and the pulling out thing, if anybody here wants to challenge themselves, like such a small thing, the next time you're in any line at all, don't look at your phone. That is how you know that there is some form of addiction to our phones, to social media, because you'll just sit there and you'll be like, I just need something to do. Like, I feel so uncomfortable. I feel like
vulnerable. You feel like, oh, I'm alone. And I left out my phone, so then people know that I'm just somehow connected. I have friends. That's just what I think.
Friends, they're all in here.
Yeah. I know. And that's what I'll do a lot of times. If I'm going to the grocery store, I'll leave my phone at home.
Yeah.
And the first couple times I did it, I had that twitch every time. Like, anytime I would go up to the counter I was waiting in line to order chicken or fish at the counter there, and then I would kind of instinctively go for my phone, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then I would do the same thing in the line once I got to checkout, and it's a real problem. But like, that does go away. Like, now I don't really flinch for it if I don't have my phone when I'm
It's a learned behavior, right? Like, you've taken all this time to learn that, and you have to take the same time to unlearn it. It's like getting into debt. Like, you've talked about that. I've gone through similar things, and you didn't get into that debt overnight, so you're not going to get out of it overnight. So you have to work at it. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort to kind of break those cycles, break that twitch, as I know you've talked about in another episode. And I just think that to me those are the things where I don't want that stuff anymore to happen in my life. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm not in control of my usage of these things. And so that's why these social media detoxes, man, they've just been so helpful for me.
When did you decide to follow an untraditional path or break free from the 9-to-5 world?
Yeah, I think I started that before college. Like, I got a gateway computer, like the Cow Box, and I remember sitting in our like downstairs office that my mom had, and I would like be on the internet playing around, and it just felt like it opened up all these doors. And in thinking about it, back in like the 1996 days, there weren't many doors to open at that time. Like, you think about it now, it's so different. But I just remember then thinking like, wow, like I want to be here. Like I want to be doing something in this space. This is so unique, so interesting. And then I went to college, and that got kind of like just beaten out of me just through like the monotony of college and classes and, you know, majors and tests and all this stupid stuff. And so I got a normal job, and I just remember like there's this whole beige existence at that 9-to-5 job. And the job was great. Like I worked for the men's professional tennis organization. I was a graphic designer, like all intents and purposes, fantastic job. It was a 3-minute commute. Like could not complain. But I just like beige walls, beige computer, beige desktop, beige mouse, like everything was beige. And I think just one day I looked around, I was like, what am I doing? You know, like, am I going to be here for the next 30 or 40 years? No, like that just scared me. And then somehow Seth Godin's book, Purple Cow, like got slid across my desk. And it unfortunately wasn't like the storybook, like, oh, everything was beige and then purple, you know, like that's a
sounds
nice,
like it.
That's
sounds
a
like
nice way to do it.
happened.
I don't think it happened that closely, but that book, I just remember reading like the first couple pages, and it was like, you know, all these cows are normal, and then you have this purple cow, and that stands out. And I was like, wow, I've felt that way inside for like a long time, especially when the internet kind of came around, but I've never really explored that. And I just had this moment where I was like, there's not going to be a better time in my life, because eventually I'm going to be married or have kids or what have you. And taking risks where you leave a job that's really nice and a 3-minute commute, like I'm not going to be able to do that at that point, or it's going to be much harder. So now's the time to take that risk and to embrace this feeling. And like, I didn't even know where it was going to take me, but that was the first moment where I felt like I need to do something. And it's crazy that Seth's book, The Purple Cow, was like the impetus to do that. Like I just never even saw that on my radar or anything. Didn't even know who he was.
Yeah, Seth Godin's incredible. I've talked about him a lot on this podcast.
Oh, so I think there's these really fun, like little linchpin moments in your life, which is funny because one of his books, and I'm sure that's just in there.
Sure.
But I emailed him after reading that book. I didn't know he was a big deal. I had no idea. And maybe at this time back then he wasn't nearly what he is now, but I just emailed him and I was like, oh, I'm so inspired by this book. Like, I think I can do these things. And I think he just wrote back something simple. It was like, yeah, good luck. Like, it's not going to be easy, but I wish you the best of luck on your journey. Like, you should definitely go for it. And like, that was, I mean, you know, it's like, oh, you know, there was nothing important said, but it just kind of gave me that permission to go, all right, let's do this. Let's try and do something else.
I emailed Seth Godin as well after reading one of his books very early
And he
on.
wrote back, I'm guessing?
Yeah. He said, thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, thanks, Matt. It was 2 words, but I was like, wow, that's incredible. But like, he's known for that. I don't know if he still does it, but for a while, he responded to every single email. Yeah. And for somebody who's like a best-selling author of 10 plus books, who gets probably thousands of emails. Yeah. I mean,
and so it's funny because going back to the conversation we had last night about like how much do you communicate with people who email you, and I don't like calling people fans because I just think it like belittles people. I think they're just friends or people on the internet. Is that I know that I've in some small way had a similar impact on some people who've emailed me and been like, hey, I saw your Irish shirt project, or I saw this project, or I saw that, and it really inspired me, and like I want to do my own thing. And like I remember what it felt like to get that email back from Seth Godin, and not to compare myself to Seth Godin at all, but like that person went on a limb to reach out to me. If I can give them just that like small percentage of a chance, that gives them the spark to do it. And I've watched it happen. It's been really cool. Like I had people who read my first book, which was a terrible piece of writing, but it was what it was when I got it out into the world. And they wrote me and they're like, this is so inspiring. I'm going to chase my thing. And like one guy's like a podcaster who's had a podcast in the top 200 of iTunes since he started. And it was literally from reading my book. He's like, I think I'm going to start a podcast. Wow. And I showed him, I was like, good man, start it. And like, that was his start. That was it for him. And I think there are so many stories like that where I just feel like, again, getting back to our conversation last night, like you replying to people who are taking the time to be vulnerable, like we were to Seth, like the thanks Matt or the like good luck Jason, it's so simple to him, but it's like the ripple effect to us is enormous. And so if we can do that for other people, even if we don't feel like we can, I think it's just worth showing up for people and trying to do that.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot to kind of turn somebody's day around. And that's the thing. Like, I think about that a lot, where what you do and how you show up in the world has a huge impact on the people around you. Yeah. And like just somebody beeping at you, that changes your mood. Like somebody's behind you honking the horn because it took you 2 seconds to start driving when the green light turned over. And you're just thinking in your, like that just the whole time you're like, oh, fuck this guy. And then like it just it comes home and it's just there. And it's like, you can actually do the opposite effect, and you can do something as simple as sending a short message to somebody and that can shift their day. And then, you know, in some cases you can change people's lives.
And that's honestly why during that first social media detox, I also created a new morning ritual for myself, which was like, I rolled out of bed. Well, I didn't even roll out of bed. I rolled over in bed to grab my phone, check Facebook, like all the notifications and everything. That's what I used to do. Well, I didn't have that anymore. So I was like, well, what do I do? Like, how do I start my day? And I had this amazing like epiphany where what if I just started with happiness instead of all this responding to things like emails and people's criticisms of things in the world that I'm like now putting on myself first thing in the morning. And it's that same ripple effect, right? It's the same honk. It's like waking up to a honk every morning, as opposed to I got up, I made coffee really slowly with no devices. I started reading Calvin and Hobbes every morning because I was obsessed.
Really?
Yeah. And so I would take like 10 minutes to make coffee in a Chemex, just like you did. I read Calvin and Hobbes while I was making it. And this was like my new morning ritual. And it was amazing because then the rest of the day, I actually felt this like lift. I felt this amazing positivity as opposed to all the reactionary stuff, all the comparison stuff from checking social media or news or whatever. And I just think that if you can kind of create those little moments for yourself, that's so powerful to be able to do that. And to realize like, I'm not going to start with all the criticisms and all the things. I'm going to start with something that makes me feel good. Then I'll go and check the email and all that stuff later because I need to for work. But yeah, I think there's just a whole difference there.
Yeah, I think that goes back to our point about hustle versus enough. And you should start your day with enough. You start your day with something for yourself,
yeah,
and not for not hopping right into the grind and feeling like you just have to output. And of course, there's going to be moments in your life where you have to put in some extra hours, where you're, heading towards a deadline, and that's totally fine. But I think if you're living your life like that too much, it's very easy to get swept up in it.
Yeah. And my wife and I like to think about it as working to live, not living to work. Mm-hmm. So you start your day, you plan your week, you have your month goals based around your life first. Then you fit business in around it. Like, why are we putting business before life? It doesn't make sense. Like, especially if you don't work in a 9-to-5 anymore, like stop doing that. You don't have to do that anymore. And I think that's it's a hard mental shift because we're not used to it. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like, well, I should be making more stuff. I should be filming more stuff. I should be creating, writing, whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, you could. It's not you should. And so you fit your life in first, and then you go, okay, how do I kind of fit this stuff around it?
So the first thing that you did was a design boutique, a little design agency, would you say, of two people?
Yeah, I think we called it a design firm.
Oh, was it a firm?
Yeah.
It was like
I think it was a firm. Yeah.
Pretty corporate.
Yeah. We were a big deal.
Yeah.
It's two of us, but it was, it was really good.
Yeah.
Had a small design company. It was another friend of mine who worked at a 9-to-5 job, didn't like it, wanted to get out of his beige existence as well. And we basically, I looked at him as like, you're such an amazing designer. I feel like my design skills are like a third of yours. So let me handle kind of trying to get clients or trying to at least manage the people that we get. And I'll give some design kind of criticism or whatnot here and there. Mm-hmm. And we just started doing that on the side, and we built a 6-month plan together. I remember we literally sat down at this like Greasy Spoon restaurant one Thursday night, and we sat down and we were both like had like papers and stuff, and we're like, okay, like 6 months from now is this date, and like we have to get to this amount of money to like make what we're making now. How many clients is that? And we just like kind of planned all this stuff out. And it wasn't like, let's quit our jobs today and do it. It was, let's work for 6 months on the side. Let's see if we actually like working together. Let's see if we like doing this, test the waters a bit. And that was my first journey escaping the 9-to-5. And it wasn't just like a cut it and go and hope that everything's going to work out. It was actually kind of save up for a little while, work on the side, see how it worked. And it worked really well. Like we ended up working really well together. I had just randomly started emailing people that I knew and just said, hey, do you need a website? Do you know anybody who needs a website? And those people would then email people they knew. And it's amazing what you get when you ask for things. And that's been a recurring theme for me in my life forever, is this phrase, you don't get what you don't ask for. Is I would just email someone and be like, hey, do you know anybody who needs a website? And they write back like, oh, actually, like my cousin's starting a whatever company, and yeah, they could use a website. Like, just send them some information. And all of a sudden I had like a $10,000 website client. I'm like, whoa, that kind of came out of nowhere. That's amazing. All I did was send one email, and this happened. And it was because I was willing to send that email, and then we were willing to send more, because you're not always going to have that happen. But yeah, so the design firm was the first thing. We did that for about 2 years. My buddy kept going after we became a boutique, by the way, because we hired a third person.
Oh, yes, that was a boutique?
Firm to boutique.
Yeah, it's a. I would think it would be the other way around.
Well, you would, but you don't know the design world.
Yeah, not in there. Yeah, exactly.
Just these stupid words. I don't even know if we actually did that, but I just like saying it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in that. I'll lead you into this next part of the journey easily here. That second year, the beginning of that, I was always talking to the clients. And so they were like, hey, Jason, we're really happy with the design. We're really happy with the website, the brand, et cetera. They're like, do you know anything about social media? And so this is like 2007, 2008. And I was like, I mean, I know of it. I know it exists. And they're like, well, could we use Facebook or Twitter to like help people find our businesses? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have a Facebook account, but my college roommate created it so that he could meet girls because his college didn't have Facebook and mine did. So he used my email to sign up. And I was like, well, I know 220 blonde girls. Like, that's all I had access to. And I didn't even know who they were. But I was like, well, let me check. You know, like anybody who's in client services or like you're trying to like make people happy. I'm like Googling like while I'm on the phone, like got the phone in the ear and I'm like, hold on, let me just take a look. And I'm looking at these platforms. I'm like, wow, this is kind of amazing. There's all these people on Twitter just sitting here talking. There's all these people on Facebook sitting here talking. Like there's a lot of attention there that no one's kind of trying to be in front of, where they're already doing it on TV and all these other things. And so I don't know why, but I just had this thought one day, I think after like the third or fourth conversation with a client of like, what if there was someone in between the company and the people sitting on social media that could kind of bridge the two together? So it wasn't just a company yelling at people saying, hey, look at our stuff. It was like a person in the middle who was like, hey, this company's kind of cool. Here's their story. Do you want to check them out? And I was like this intermediary. And it wasn't even me at the time. It was just like, oh, that would be interesting. And then the next kind of cog in that wheel that eventually became Ira Your Shirt was I stood in my closet one day and I looked at all these stupid shirts that I had hanging up and I was like, there's a Polo logo, there's a Busted Tees t-shirt, there's a Nike logo. Like I'm wearing all these brands, like brand for them. I'm not getting paid for it. I paid them to wear these around. Like, could I flip that? Could I be a person who just like wore a shirt and got paid to wear that shirt and then talked about these companies? And it was such a ridiculous idea. And I remember I got on AOL Instant Messenger because we're like 2007, 2008 right now. And I just messaged a bunch of friends who were up. And I was like, I just had this weird idea. Like, what if I wore a t-shirt for a company and like talked about them on social media? And like 4 or 5 people that were awake at the time, this was probably like midnight, like, you're an idiot. Go back to sleep. Like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would anybody pay you? You're nobody. Like, why would we do this? I was like, wow, got to get some better friends.
Yeah,
but I think we've all been there, right? Like you have a creative idea and you have all these friends who they don't see what you see. They have fears. They have biases that they're putting on you for their, they wouldn't want to do that thing. And I was stubborn enough. And, I had this design boutique to keep track of where I was in my mind that was doing well. So I was like, I could afford to lose if I tried this. It wouldn't really matter. And so, I just started this idea called Ira Your Shirt and kind of put it out into the world and said, I'm going to do this project.
I think a big thing is don't kill people's ideas. Because a lot of times as creatives, we get very excited about things. And a majority of the time, those ideas, we bounce off the wall. We tell other people, we get excited about it. But, 9 times out of 10, it may not be an idea we actually act on.
Yeah. So
don't be like the partner or the friend who's always just shooting somebody down or poking holes in it. It's not going to work because of this. It's not going to work because of this. You can't do it because of this reason. Instead, I think encourage people through the first couple weeks as they explore an idea. And then once they get to a point where it's like they're they want some constructive feedback, then you can actually bring it in.
I think that's hard for people to learn who don't actually create and do things, right? Because it's like all you have are your fears and your biases based on your life and your experiences, as opposed to people like you and I who've now created a lot of things and we've spent a lot of time in creation mode, and you know how important it is that you do have that positive feedback because that's what keeps you going, right? Like if you kept making videos and recording these episodes and not a single person listened to them, listen, I don't care how much you love it. Eventually, you're going to stop doing it if no one's listening to it. It's just, you're not going to do it forever. And having those moments of positivity, it really comes with like you and I have the context of, I've done this so much. Like when someone comes to me, I know what they need. They just need someone to be like, thanks, Matt. Like, good luck, keep going. And they're going to be like, all right, cool. I'm going to start my own YouTube. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do whatever. I think that's hard when you have your friends. And that's actually, that taught me a huge lesson super early on of like, when you're trying to get feedback for your idea, when you're trying to get feedback for a dream you want to put out into the world, you need to get feedback from people who are actually in the trenches doing what you're trying to do. Not your mom, not your friends, not your family, because if they haven't done what you're trying to do, their feedback is dangerous. It can completely derail you because all they're going to present you with is biased feedback. They're not doing what you wanted to do, as opposed to people who have, and they can say, yeah, that's an interesting idea. Now I'm going to tell you it's going to be a lot of work and it's probably going to take you 6 to 12 months to make this thing happen, but I think you should chase it down. Like that's a reasonable thing to do, as opposed to people who are just like, that's a bad idea, Jason, go back to bed. This t-shirt thing is ridiculous. You're an idiot.
Yeah. So how did this t-shirt thing take off? Because it got weird.
Yeah. Well, it's weird from,
Well, it's weird from the beginning,
Yeah.
but it got even weirder because it worked.
Yeah, it really did. Well, so first day the website goes up, this is like, everyone's been here, right? You're just like, I spent all this time, we built a brand, I did a photo shoot, first ever photo shoot, super awkward photos. You can still find them on the internet. They're hilarious. And we launched the website, which literally just meant turning it on and making it live. And 12 people showed up that day. 12. And I think it was like me, the two people that I worked with in my boutique, my mom, my grandma probably like multiple times, like she was just refreshing it. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, it doesn't work this way. You can't just like put something out onto the internet. It's like building a hotel in the desert, right? Like if there's no road to get to it, if there's no billboards pointing you in the right direction, you're never going to find it. And so I just had this moment where I was like, oh, I have to start like pushing this thing out. Okay, I should probably use these social media channels that I've been thinking about or looking at. So I just hopped on Twitter and just like, had an account that I had made, but I started actually like talking to people, and I would just search hashtags, just like random hashtags of t-shirts or companies that I thought were interesting, or just people around my area, and just like jump in random conversations. And I wasn't pitching or selling anything. I was just showing up, and then people would click through and they'd be like, this is 2008 Twitter, so there's not a whole bunch going on. And they'd click through and be like, I wear your shirt, what is this? And they'd see my bio and they'd go to the website. And so like 12 people became 30 people the next day. And then 30 people the next day after that became 40 people. And it had this slow build, and all of a sudden I would get like a sale or two here. And the way that I sold I wear your shirt, because this is even weirder, was I decided I would sell the entire year of 2009 at face value. So January 1 was $1, January 2 was $2, January 3 was $3, all the way up to December 31st, 365 day of the year, $365.
Right, so you're wearing people's shirt each day, a different company, and but like I guess people wouldn't see. It's not how many people are you actually coming into contact with.
Exactly.
So how are you actually showing that you're wearing the shirt?
And that was the point of the pricing structure, was like, listen, if you pay $5, you don't care that only like 13 people saw it, right? It's not a big spend for you. But my goal was, hey, I'm going to show up every day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be on social media. I'm going to be promoting these companies. Hopefully I will grow. And by the end of the year, $365 will be worth it. I mean, it sounds like a joke amount of money now. Maybe it doesn't. But to me, that felt like a good way to kind of organically grow this and see my community grow with it. Because I'd never had a community before. I didn't know what that meant. And yeah, so it kind of just got going, and it started building the steam, and I just kept sending emails to people that I would come in contact with. I had people who would email me and be like, hey, my friend has like a business they're starting. It's like a dog poop bag company or something. And I was like, well, that's kind of a weird shirt to wear, but it's a fun story. Like that to me sounds like an interesting thing to like solve that problem. And I'm opting into wearing logos, right? Like I'm not going to wear stuff I don't want to, but like a dog poop bag company, sure, let's do it. Like that sounds kind of fun and interesting and weird. And how can I make that, unique or fun for people to watch? And when January 1st rolled around, after 3 months of kind of hustling and being in that hustle mode, I had landed half the year's sponsors before I'd even started. And it was just people buying into the idea, the thought. And this is something I've done. I did it that time with that business without even really knowing it. Now, every single business I start, I try and pre-sell it or do pre-orders in some way. Because to me, that's the ultimate validator of someone will care about your idea. If they will pull out their wallet and go, here's money for the thing that you're selling. Especially if you're building a business. I think if you're just creating content online, like it's going to be really hard to do that. But every business, every course, everything that I sell now, it's like, can I get people to pay for it in advance? Because that tells me, oh, there's actual interest here. Like people actually believe this has value. And so, I had that. And then I started every day in January wearing a t-shirt every single day, filming a YouTube video on a flip cam, no joke, because it was 2009. And they were awful. Like the videos were so bad. I didn't know how to edit video. I didn't even January 1st was the first day I opened in a movie editing program, which was iMovie. I didn't know what to do. I just plugged in the thing and was like, okay, is this going to work itself out? Whoop, I'm going to have a video. I kind of just kept going. I fell into it and just started wearing shirts for no-name companies. Like the first couple months, it was just nothing. And I remember the first big break I had was, I think it was like the second or third week I'd been doing it, and Ustream, the live streaming platform at the time, put me on the front page of their site. Because they're like, well, you're showing up every day. Like, we need consistent content. And you're kind of a weird dude. Like, why are you doing this project? And I'm sure they were probably just like, let's just flip this on and see what happens. And they're like, we'll turn it off.
Yeah.
And 5,000 people watched that live stream. And all of a sudden I had some agency in Alabama call me. I don't know how they got my phone number. And probably because I put it on the website because I was just so hungry to have people talk to me. And they called me and they're like, hey, we want to buy up the 18 days left in this month that you have. And that was the first moment where I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. It's not just like one company. It's like this agency that sees something bigger. And so there was little moments like that started happening kind of along the way. And then, I got all kinds of weird stuff that went on that project for 5 years.
Well, it was a 5-year project, and then the company grew, and when you do the math, if you're selling out for a year, that's a lot of money. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, $365 for a day.
$66,795.
Yeah.
I counted it up in an Excel sheet. I literally put 1, 2, 3, 4. I had no idea how to do. There's a formula for it now that people have told me 1,000 times over. But yeah, that first year was I figured out like monthly sponsorships. So there's a thing I was like, ooh, like a new revenue stream. I could do monthly sponsors as well, like bumpers on the videos and things. Mm-hmm. And again, this is before like no one was doing this type of stuff. There was no influencer marketing where you had these things. I was just making it up as I was going along. I ended up making like $85,000 that first year, and had almost no expenses whatsoever. And I was like, this is amazing. I just made this entire thing up, and it worked. And it just took my effort and my ingenuity and my just being me. Like, I wasn't trying to be anybody else. And kind of crazy, like, I think it was August 2008 was when the final day sold for that first year, or 2009, sorry, was when the first day sold for that year. So like the whole year was sold by August, and I was like, all right, what am I going to do next year? Because I want to keep doing this. This is amazing. I just made all this money, and I'm doing what I want to do, or at least what I thought I wanted to do. And so I decided to scale up, because that's what I thought, like, oh, got to scale up. So I got a second person to join me. We doubled the price of the calendar, and I launched the calendar like a couple weeks later, and half of 2010 sold out at double the price when I launched it. And so now I had like $60,000 like in my PayPal account, because I didn't know how to do anything else. I took it through PayPal, and like PayPal sent me an email. They're like, we're gonna have to hold this money for like 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
And I was like, what? Like, this is like the first time I'd ever like experienced like that type of stuff. Like, you have these weird growth issues, but yeah, I tried to grow the company. I did grow the company. I mean, I grew it to 2 people in the second year, to 5 people in the third year, and then that was when I really started to notice, like, I'm just growing and scaling, and I can't keep up with this, because I'm still filming a video every day. And as we talked about at dinner last night, I remember I filmed 889 videos in a row without a day off. And that's with a live show every day. That's a YouTube video. That's me answering emails. The Irish Shirt website, about halfway through 2009, started getting 10,000 visitors a day. And so with that, like, my email address was like right on the front page. So people were emailing me, like people were contacting me through social media.
You're talking holidays, weekends.
Every single day, 889 days straight. And it just got to this place. And it's funny, because I think what happened for me was I hit 1 million views on Ustream. I'd already hit it on YouTube, but I hit 1 million views on Ustream of the live streaming at that 889th day. And that was the moment where I was like, I don't feel great. Like, I feel so tired. I should feel amazing at this moment. And like, I remember pretending on that live stream of that day, like, this is so great. Like, everybody, we did it. Like, thanks so much for showing up. And I flipped up the camera, and I just like went and like laid down in a hotel bed, because I was traveling a whole ton at that time. I was like, this is miserable. I really hate this. Like, all intents and purposes, you see me, I'm like the happiest guy ever. But I turn the camera off, I'm not happy at all. And I started to learn this. Like, I met other YouTubers now, because YouTubers are becoming a thing. I met other people at conferences, and like, you put on the show, and then backstage you're like, I fucking hate my job. And it's like, I do too. I really do. And they're like, what? Like, you're the Irish Shirt guy. You're on the Today Show. You're on all these things. Like, everything's so great. And it's like, yeah, but I'm having trouble keeping the business running. Like, I don't know how to manage the money. I have 5 people I have to keep track of. Like, they don't show up for a day, and like, what do I have to keep up with them and like apologize. And so it was just all these things that I didn't know were going to come with trying to scale and grow. But that's what I thought I was supposed to do. It's like back to the hustle thing, right? Like, I just thought I was supposed to keep doing this, and maybe eventually, I don't know what would happen, but I just thought like it would just take off, or someone would buy it. What would people buy? I don't know. Like, Matt, like, what would people, I had this idea someone was just going to come to me and be like, Jason, here's like $10 million for our research. And like, I would just get to be like, whew, all right, I did it. That never even got close to happening. But yeah, it was just all these lessons learned. And then, so the business for 5 years ran and made $1.2 million in revenue. And by the end of it, I had $100,000 in debt, and it sucked. And I felt like a complete failure and fraud by the end of it. Like, because that like millionth view live stream, like from there was like, I was here, and then I just started just trending down. Like every show became a grind, especially every like Saturday show. And I was like, I just wish I had a Saturday again. Like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I working every single day? And I just thought I had to. Like going back to the very beginning of this conversation, like I thought I had to show up for people, and now I've just learned like you just don't. Like they'll be happier for you if you take some time off and actually like figure out a business model that's sustainable, so you can keep showing up and like presenting value to them in some way.
Was there a moment when you realized that this wasn't working, that it was kind of like a wake-up call where you're like, I need to turn things around, like this, I'm in debt, I'm not where I want to be, I'm working too hard?
Yeah, I mean, it got to a place where like I had, I'm trying to do the mental math, I think I had $30,000 is a nice round number in monthly expenses between salaries for 7 people is what it got to, because I had 2 like operations people, because I couldn't keep up. I was getting 300 emails a day. I couldn't keep up with it. And a lot of those were companies that were like, we want to work with you, but like, we don't just want to buy a day. We want to put you on a cruise, or we want to do whatever. So it's not just, hey, go pay me money. It's like, oh, I have to think about this. I have to like come up with creative ideas for this 365 times. Then with 5 potential additional sponsors, that was 5x of that. So it was crazy. But I just remember in 2011, it got to this place where towards the end of the year, I was like, I can't keep spending $30,000 a month. Like the next year is going to turn over, and the pricing structure I kept the same. So it was low in the beginning of the year, and it would grow throughout the year, and it wasn't sustainable, because guess what never changed? The amount of money I had to spend every month never changed, but the amount of money I made drastically reduced, and that's just like a bad business model.
Yeah.
And so I realized, like, I hit January of 2012, and I was like, I don't have money to pay the bills. And I had to borrow money from family, and that was like the worst call to make ever. Like I had to call I called my grandparents, and I was like, is there any way I can just borrow money? Like I know I'm going to have it because I'm eventually going to like make more money, but like this isn't working in some way. And then I remembered I maxed out like my 4th credit card to kind of keep this stuff going. And when I hit $100,000 in total business debt, I think it was like mid 2012, that was like the line is drawn in the sand. Like this can't work anymore. And I was also 50 pounds overweight at that time. I didn't sleep at all. I was just miserable. And I just decided like something has to give. And it's going to be either me, or it's going to be this stupid business that I like have put all my self-worth into. And the business is going to have to give, because I just can't take it anymore.
So what did you do from there? Like, how did you actually turn things around? Did you close the business down?
Yeah. Well, my pride was too strong. I couldn't shut the business down completely. And the crazy part is like, I'm still getting emailed from like Today Show type outlets. Like I would be flown to Atlanta to go on CNN, and like literally they would pay my dime to go and show up and like do a thing with them. Or like I would do a satellite interview for Fox News or whatever. And like now I wouldn't do that interview in a heartbeat, but back then I was like, oh, this is awesome for the business, I'm getting this exposure. But I just decided like I have to let people go. And so I made these calls, and I basically just told people like, hey, I have enough money to pay you for the next month, and I'll understand if you want to quit today. I really hope you don't, because like I'm trying to do everything I can. And I finally started telling them like I had to borrow money, I had to do all these things, and I think a lot of them didn't know any of it. Well, they didn't know any of that. Like I think they saw I was tired, but they didn't know the financial side. And they were all very gracious, and they were like, yep, we understand, we'll figure it out. And I essentially let everybody go except for my girlfriend at the time, is now my wife. She was doing operation stuff, so like she stayed on. And then one guy who actually had moved to Florida where I live to like work for me from Michigan, which is crazy. Sean Ely, you're the best. But like we stuck together, and I said, let's change this to a video production company. And so we'll just do videos for people, and like still be the I wear your shirt kind of thing, but like we'll just do less and like scale back everything. And that was mid 2012, and I tried to keep it going for like 6 or 8 more months. And then in the beginning of 2013, I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like I can't keep filming videos. I hate the video camera. I hate the editing. I hate everything about it. I don't like dealing with clients and all their requests. And like I'd put up a video and then someone would get mad, and I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And so in May of 2013, I shut everything down, and it sucked. Like it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. And now looking back, I'm like, so stupid that was one of the hardest things I had to do in my life. Like I created that thing that became so difficult for me to do.
It's hard to give up.
My whole identity was tied to it. I was like, what am I going to do next? Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm now like a one-hit wonder internet person, like I'm the $1 million homepage guy, which by the way, Alex too, amazing human being. Like not $1 million
homepage, right? Was that around the same time?
He did that in 2005. Which is so early. And I remember that was like same time Purple Cow kind of came across my desk. And so those things were the 2 things I think that planted the seed.
This is a guy that he sold a Pixel For what was it, a pixel,
A
a dollar a
dollar,
pixel, and
yeah.
there's 1 million pixels on the website.
Yeah.
And
There's a really
guy made $1 million.
There's a really interesting like full story to that, and then I think I think he still does, like he creates like web apps and things now. He's a really smart guy. Alex 2 is his name if anybody wants to look it up. But he, like, how he built that was not just everyone showed up and bought pixels. Like he had to buy like advertising space, and he had to buy like PR and stuff. And there's like a lot of like actual business stuff that went into making that a thing. But I defend him a lot because people are like, oh, he just put up this website and made all this money. I'm like, no, he didn't. He worked really hard.
Yeah.
Like he had to do a lot of stuff, and yes, it worked out. It's kind of like I wear your shirt. Like, oh, you just put on a shirt every day, and you made a lot of money. You made $1 million. I'm like, yeah, that's the AOL headline that they wrote, and I told them to change it because like I don't have $1 million. Like I didn't. It's not how it worked.
Yeah.
And like media just doesn't want to do that. And then when you lose control of that stuff, then like someone else is twisting your identity. I still get emails now, even today. People email me like, "Can I wear shirts for you?" Like, first of all, that was 5 years ago. That was like the last time I did that. And second, like, what are you still reading that still says that I'm doing this? You know, like there's articles that still come out that say like, you can work for this guy. I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah. Take me to the stage at MisfitCon, Fargo, North Dakota.
Yeah. So that was, what was that? Right before I shut everything down. So like right around May or somewhere around there of 2013. So I was brought in to speak at this tiny little conference in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm getting chills just thinking about this. That's like how impactful this was in my life. And I don't know who the speakers are. I just know who the people are putting it on. I actually asked them if they could pay for my ticket to fly up there because I couldn't afford it. I didn't have any money left, like literally nothing. And AJ and Melissa, such amazing human beings who put it on, they actually paid for my plane ticket for my girlfriend and I, now wife, to come up. Do I just call her wife if it's in the past?
I think
call
so.
her wife full time?
Ex-wife.
Previous pre-wife. I don't know.
pre-wife.
That's getting into weird stuff. Anyway, breaking the tension here. So we fly up there, and I'm just feeling like a fraud, like leading up to it, and it's like this handcrafted, curated event. It's beautiful. Like the town brought in furniture for everybody. It's like 100 seats are in there, small stage, like just so beautiful, and no one knows who the speakers are. And I remember listening to a couple talks ahead of mine, and I was pretty early on. And so I went up and I was supposed to be interviewed by this guy who's going to ask me all these questions. And I just remember sitting there thinking like, I'm not going to do it anymore. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and pretend to have this like great story and everything's going perfect. And I'll never forget, like, beginning of the talk, I was like, guys, I hope AJ and Melissa don't kill me. I'm going to tell you what's really going on. And for 45 minutes, I think I just bared my soul. I blacked out. I literally don't remember anything that I said. And then I just remember kind of snapping back into place, and there was like standing ovation, people crying. Now, MisfitCon is also super special, so I think people standing out at like every single talk because that was just the nature of the thing. So it wasn't just that mine was that great, but I remember coming off the stage and like Pam Slim, who's an author who was there. She's written 2 amazing books, body of work. I would highly recommend anyone read it if you're like, I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. She gave me a big hug and she was like, if you need anything, like please call me and talk to me. Like I can help you, whatever. And I really wanted to call and talk to her. Side note, it took me 8 months to get the courage to call and talk to her. Like that's how much pride I still had. But so I bared my soul. I felt just like I felt this huge relief. I was also really feeling down. And then Joshua Fields Milburn, someone you know, gets up on stage shortly thereafter me. And first of all, his hair was just fucking amazing. And
I was great hair.
God, I just wanted to kiss it.
Yeah.
I wanted to kiss his hair, like not his face. And anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm feeling so bad about myself. And I'm hearing his story. And he was like, you know, I'm in debt and I've got all these things and I'm trying to get more and I'm all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my story. Like he's telling a version of my story as well. And I just remember listening to his talk and like going up afterwards and like shaking his hand and be like, wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, and he was like, I really liked your talk as well. Like, thank you for the vulnerability. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I saw this person like up here, you know, and I'm like, we're on the same stage. And we get on the flight back, my wife and I, and we're talking and we're just like, things have to change, you know, and that was really what led to shutting down I Wear Your Shirt. That's what led to us kind of embracing minimalism and kind of just getting rid of everything and really building a path for ourselves to get out of this life in Florida that we built that was like full of comfort and not taking risks anymore and everything else, and actually trying to embrace adventure and change and experimentation and just going like, we can do anything. Why are we doing things that we don't love doing?
And then your life from there, was it challenging from that point to
No, it was
to
perfect.
make a shift?
It was perfectly easy. Everything fell into place. I just got like lots of money, like really fast. It was just no.
That's incredible.
It was. I wrote multiple posts. So I started writing. That was the thing that really came out of that. I was like, I just need to start. I have all these feelings that I need to let go of because I've held them in. Because every day I had to be on a live show where I was perfect. Because I was wearing a company's brand. I couldn't be sad. I couldn't be upset. Life was shitting on my face at certain times. I couldn't say that. And so I finally had this release in writing. And so I would write these posts where like, I just feel lost. I just feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And it wasn't all doom and gloom in the post. It was like, I hope if you're reading this and you're feeling the same way, like, I think this is normal. Like, I think we're all going through this. And I started to just build an audience through these really just thoughtful and like I think vomiting for me of all these feelings, and people really resonated with it. And it wasn't tons of people. I mean, it was definitely not as many people as were checking out the I Wear Your Shirt website every day, which is kind of crazy. But it was the right kind of people. It was people who were showing up and like they were encouraging, they were creating stuff, they were enjoying what they were doing. And it just kind of created this momentum for me where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a one-hit wonder. I started to get this like charge again to do more things. And that's really when I found like creating online courses and kind of selling experience and knowledge that I had built so that people could avoid the mistakes that I'd made. And I'd had so much experience selling sponsorships specifically. So that was like the first thing I gravitated toward was like, what can I do that I know a lot about, that I actually feel confident that I could teach someone how to do something? And let me just try that, because that seems so much easier than like filming a YouTube video every day and doing everything. And I had seen a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space started to create courses, and I was like, what are these things? And so I created my first course. I thought I was going to do like a 6-figure launch and like everything was going to turn around. I made $5,000 in the first launch, which is a great amount of money. Like you can't poo-poo that, but I was expecting $100,000. Very different. And I realized like, oh, this is a whole different type of work. This is, I can't just like make a funny video. I have to actually like provide value to someone and teach them something. And so I learned just a whole bunch of stuff in that whole world. And that was kind of like the next year and a half was trying to figure out how to create value for people, not entertainment, which is what I had been doing, but like actually like I can teach you something. I can teach you something that I've learned in the past 5 years, and you can skip all the hard work that I did, and you can come out of it with a skill that then you can build a business for yourself or a life for yourself that you want.
When I look at your work today, it feels so authentic, and that's a word that is just thrown around so casually. And it's hard because there's a lot of brands that try to manipulate through this guise of being authentic, and that's what they're in boardroom saying, all right, how do we authentically connect with this audience? How do we appear as if we're being authentic with our message and all this stuff? How do we as individuals who are truly expressing ourselves online and trying to find our voice, how do we actually be authentic and not be fake authentic?
Yeah. I think for me, like I was fake authentic for years, and it just like, I knew what it felt like to be fake, to turn off the camera and then have this like, I just felt terrible. And then this shift happened when I started writing, and then specifically when I wrote Creativity for Sale, my first book. So I had this idea to write this book because I had been writing and I'd really liked the kind of cathartic feeling that it was giving, but I actually had a fun idea of how to make money with the book, and I wanted to challenge myself to do something. So I created the site, sponsormybook.com. So this is where the very literal domains, Jason does stuff, I wear your shirt, sponsor my book. Like, it's
Buy my last name.
Buy my last name was in there as well. We'll come back to that one. We'll try and keep that one short because there's still more.
So
Crazy.
many big, insane ideas, which is fun.
And so the book project was essentially like I learned all this stuff about helping people sell sponsorships. I had 1,600 brands that I'd worked with, and I was like, I think what might be interesting for this book is like the whole book is about selling creativity. I had all these sponsors. It's such a big part of my life. The last name project was right before that. What if I sold a sponsor on every single page, and it wasn't, like I could choose the companies to say no to or whatever. And it was just one little line, like a little length of a tweet, 140 characters at the bottom of every page. And they could just accompany the journey of this book that I wanted to write. And I put this website together. It ended up taking me about 3,000 emails, me sending individually to people, both people who reached out because I built a website and they found it, they had questions. But like 3,000, I kept track, 3,000 total emails I had to send, but I made $75,000. So I literally wrote myself essentially in advance for $75,000 for this book. I'd never written a book before. I'd barely written blog posts up until that point. And I had this book that I published and put out into the world. And it was just one of those things where that was another part of this journey for me where I was like, wow, I can just make something up that no one I'd seen do before. I can just use my effort and my work to make it happen. And I can make a good living from it, and I can produce something and I can put it out there. And that was a huge turning point for me as well. And so going back to the authenticity thing, like that for me was where I realized like, I'm not a good writer, and it's okay because how I write and what I write resonates with people. So I don't have to be Stephen King. I don't have to be Seth Godin. I don't have to be any of these things. I can just be me. And I'm going to have a very small audience of people that really enjoy that. But you know what? Those people have money and they'll pay to support in some way, and it can still work out. And so that for me became this kind of like huge aha moment, this turning point for me of like, wow, like I can just be myself. I don't have to pretend to be anything. I can be real. I can be honest, and people will still support in some way these projects that I come up with.
You have a lot of experience with advertising sponsorships, working with brands, and doing it from the very beginning in 2008 when nobody else was doing it, to now where we see it taking on a life of its own, and every other Instagram post that I see is a sponsored post, hashtag ad, hashtag sponsor. What are your thoughts on advertising? How is advertising impacting people today, and how can we authentically work with brands to make money?
I hate it and I love it at the same time. And it's weird because I still think, going back to the very beginning of Ira Your Shirt, the crux of what I wanted to do was tell the stories of interesting companies in like a human, authentic, relatable way. I think when advertising is done that way and the company actually makes something useful or helpful, it's fantastic. Like, I think we've all seen an ad for something. They've been like, oh, that's cool. You know, like I'm actually glad I saw that. Now, that's one out of probably every 100 ads, right? Because you get an ad for Band-Aid and you're like, what? You know, like, I don't understand. Like, this is literally one I saw on my Instagram feed, and I told my wife, I was like, I just got an ad for Band-Aid. She was like, what did it say? I'm like, it was a Band-Aid. You know, like, I don't understand. And I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing, because listen, I wore shirts for a lot of these companies. I wore shirts for like Pizza Hut and these brands that like I don't even support with my money anymore. And I look back on that and I'm like, should I regret those decisions that I made? And I'm like, you know what? No, because I had to go through those decisions to get to the place where I am now, where like I now have a filter for who I work with, what I do, the companies that I represent. And I didn't know any better. I just had to get started with something. And I think the way that advertising is being done now online, the thing I don't like is the disruptive nature of the things that we curate. And I just wish there was another option. Like, I wish in Instagram they could say like, hey, do you want to pay $100 per year and never see any ads? Or you can at least pick the companies that you like, or the like things that you like, and like make it better. Because like, I just hate seeing the completely incongruent ads, or the ads that like are things that I'm like diametrically opposed to. You know, like that's the stuff for me. Like, if I see another Progressive insurance ad in my feed, I just hate it, because I'm like, number one, I'm already a Geico customer. So like, you guys obviously know a lot of information about people. Like, how are we not figuring this stuff out? Like, I'm not going to switch some other company already has my money. I don't want to see this stuff. So that's where I say I hate advertising, because we're not good enough yet to actually know and be smart with it. And it is really disruptive. But I do think on the other side, it's like, you can really find some cool stuff. You know, like, people can be promoting their stuff in a way where that's the only way that they're going to be able to cut through the noise. And that can be really helpful, and it can be really interesting.
And then what about the side of actually making money? So as content creators, we spend a lot of time just focusing on making stuff. And for a lot of us, the easiest way to go about making a profitable business is to just click that monetization button, or to accept a lot of sponsorships and start putting ads on our videos and doing these sponsored posts. So, you know, how do we as the creators, as the ones that are actually advertising on our products or our videos, how do we figure out how to navigate that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me not to answer this question without sounding like a hypocrite, right? Because I took a lot of money from a lot of companies that I no longer would support, and that was just me being young and immature and not knowing any better. You know, nowadays I would never take money from a company that I didn't directly support or I didn't believe in. And so I think that, to me, is the difference for creators. Is you may, when you're getting started, need to take some money from companies so you can put food on the table, and everyone's just going to have to understand that, hey, that's part of the game. But I think if you do have a choice, like, I think you're in such an interesting position, right? Because you have the success of the documentary, you have some previous client work that you did that like built up this buffer, you know, like you have these things that you don't have to flip on monetization. And also, if you're really crunching the numbers, like, what does monetization actually mean for a lot of these creators? A couple $100 a month? Can't you make that in a different way that doesn't create this disruptive experience where someone's now getting like a Cialis ad before your videos and you can't control it, right? Like, you just get whatever shows up. And instead, it's how can you use the creativity that you have to reach out to a brand that you love? And this is where I think so many creators could just do themselves a service. Is like, if you have built a platform of any size, you can reach out to someone or companies that you love. Because this is what I did for my book. I reached out to 2 companies that I wanted to be cover sponsors. One said no, one said yes. I ended up with a $20,000 sponsorship because I reached out and said that I love them, because I did. But reach out to these companies and go, I have a creative idea for you. I make this content. I have this audience. I see this thing that we could do together for like a 5 to 10 podcast episodes, or 5 to 10 weeks on YouTube, or whatever it is that you're creating or on your website. And we could build a relationship together. Do you want to work together? And those companies may only do stuff via like CPM or whatever normally, but guess what they're not getting? Those types of emails every day. And those types of emails are the ones where they go, screw our CPM. We've got 10 grand. We can throw this kid on YouTube. Like he'll do some fun stuff. We'll see what happens. And to me, I think that's where creators can do themselves a positive service with advertising instead of just taking money for a brand and being like, hey guys, check out the new whatever thing that's going around YouTube that everyone's talking about that that person doesn't care about. As soon as the camera's done, they're just like drop it on the floor and they're on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to a brand that like, I actually really love these Bose headphones or whatever, and like I'm working with them because it's an amazing product and like watch this like fun sizzle reel that I created of these headphones or something fun, and I just think that there's so much opportunity there that people don't take advantage of because it's easier to flip on the switch and then just be like, okay, I'll make some money.
Yeah, I think people flip on the switch too early as well because I think if you're getting like thousands of views on your videos or tens of thousands, like you said, you're making $100 a month, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think that's worth it at that point to give up there's friction that's going to be added. And I don't think people actually realize that. It's like, well, if people are used to ads, they're used to ads. But you know what? Like, how many videos have you clicked away from because an ad popped up before and you're like, you know what, screw it. I probably shouldn't be on YouTube right now anyway.
Yeah.
And that you just lost a subscriber. You just lost somebody that could potentially be like a fan of your content for life.
And it may not happen with the first time that you see that ad, right? But I think we all know, like we've been on those channels, we're like, I wish they, like, can't you guys make money some other way? Like, I hate seeing these ads before your videos, especially these super incongruent ones. And I think those little moments, they add up. And eventually you do exactly what you just said. You're like, I'm going to unsubscribe from this person. Like, I don't like their videos anymore. And it's probably not that you don't like their videos anymore. It's that you don't like the interruptive experience of trying to get to their videos anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last night too, but is it authentic? So you look at somebody like Tim Ferriss or any like Joe Rogan, who they are only talking about brands usually where they use and they value. And I think that's like, that should be the starting point. People shouldn't be shilling products and services that they've never used. I feel like you're doing your audience a giant disservice. You're telling them, hey, go buy this thing that I've never used, or go buy this thing that I tried out and but I'm not going to end up bringing into my life and not going to use on a regular basis. Is that they're not getting creative with it?
Yeah.
They're just reading something. But in a way, is that actually an authentic approach to advertising where they're like not kind of pretending like it's something that it's, or it kind of dressing it up and making it seem like it's, there's the line where it's like if they try to incorporate it into a conversation, that to me feels awkward. That's like wrong, where it's in the middle of the podcast where they're like, yeah, and actually I do use these headphones, even if it feels natural, like, this doesn't feel right. So it's like, is that okay? Or should we be getting more creative with how we're bringing ads in and sponsorships?
It's tough. I think it's a tough question. I mean, I listen to some of those podcasts and I listen to some of those ads and like, I don't know, I'm obsessed with Dak Shepard's podcast, The Armchair Expert. Like, I love it. I just love his authentic, like you talk about authenticity. That dude is authentic to the max. And he didn't have ads the first couple episodes, and then his podcast took off, and now he has ads from all the companies of all the things. And some of them he uses and some of them he doesn't. And I found myself like, I get a little angry at the ad part, and I'm just like, fast forward. And is that going to be the thing where it's like the little dots, little blips, and then like I'm not going to listen to his podcast anymore? And was it because I listened to a bad episode, or was it because of all those little moments where I was like, man, this really like fragmented his, like the authentic thing for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I like when someone promotes something that they absolutely love. When you can hear it in someone's voice. When someone talks about a product that they love and that they're actually passionate about it, it's very clear when it's different of like, hey guys, you got to sleep tonight, so do I. Like, let's talk about the mattress that everyone knows. And it's like, it's not authentic. It's just really not. And I mean, who am I to judge these people? I mean, I wear shirts for all these companies again, but I will say the one thing that I was super intentional about was I never shilled the company to like go and purchase every day. That was never my thing. My thing was, here's the story of this company. Here's the funny skit I'm doing on YouTube. Here's this, and I'm presenting it to you. Please go check it out and see if it's right for you, but don't just go buy it. Like, I'm not just telling you to go buy it. And I think that's the difference is these companies through podcast advertising and all this stuff. It's like, you need to go buy, you need to go use my discount. You need to go do this. Like, that to me is where it's like, do I need to? Do we all need to be buying all these things? Or could we just be presenting these in a different way that's fun? And I mean, again, like, let's go back to the enough thing from the very beginning. Like, how many more like sponsorships does Tim Ferriss need? And again, like, I don't know Tim's situation on these things, but like, at what point does he just go, you know what? Like, I'm just going to have one sponsor per episode and I'm going to make it companies that I really love. And I'm just going to focus on that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, sure, that's the altruistic, or at least as altruistic you can get with advertising, but why not do that? And I don't know, maybe it's just because they have different goals, they have different financial things that they want to hit, and they're driven by different things than we are, where I'm okay with not doing any of that stuff anymore. And you're obviously okay with it because you could have flipped on monetizing and advertising and accepted some of these things, but you don't, because you're like, I'll make money in different ways. I'll figure out how to make this work and not have to make this experience or do something that I'm somewhat opposed to.
Right. I think I admire people like Josh and Ryan from the Minimalists and Sam Harris, who have these very large followings, where if they did banners on their website and flipped on advertising on their podcast or on their YouTube channels, they could be making millions of dollars every year.
Yeah.
And that's a very tempting thing to want to do.
Yeah.
How many people could say no to that?
Yeah.
And I think it does come at a cost. I don't think it's going to like destroy any of their audiences or destroy anybody's audience who's like thinking about doing this for their own channels. But I do think it separates you from other people when you take a stand and you're like, either I'm not going to do advertising or I'm going to be so thoughtful about it that I'm going to be giving up 75 to 80% of sponsors that might want to share on my platform.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about it too from the perspective of a lot of these people where they're just entertainers, right? Like that's all they're doing. So like, how can you really make money with that? There's so few actual avenues. Whereas I see people like you or the Minimalists, like they do so many other things to make money. Like they have actual business models outside of the content they create and the entertainment that they create, that those are the things that support making the things and keeping them free. And I will say, and I think they talked about this in an episode, because this is a thought that I had, was like, you are still advertising your own stuff a lot of times.
Yeah.
Even without even knowing it, you're saying like, hey, go check this out or go see that. You're mentioning your own things, and that is a form of advertising in itself that will lead to dollars in some way. And maybe it wasn't like you got a check from X mattress company, but you did get people to buy X thing eventually down that road. Is that the same? Is that different?
Yeah, I felt the same way, and like that was my mentality too. It was like where I want to develop a couple courses first, where I'm like, I could just advertise that at the beginning of the podcast. Be like, hey, anybody who wants to support the show, I just created my first course. It's about how to make better videos, and then pitch it that way. Where it's like, instead of, it takes extra work. You have to create more content. You have to create a lot more stuff. There's more time, and it may not be able to. It's not as easy as flipping a switch or just making a simple read.
Yeah.
But I feel like that would be more profitable. And it's also going to be more beneficial to your audience, because your audience is getting direct value from you. You would probably make way more sales selling your own course than somebody else's course, because people are coming there for you. So I feel like it's a win-win. That said, easier said than done, and I think everybody's got to kind of figure out where they fit into the mix on this.
And again, like, who are we to judge these people and the decisions that they make? Like, again, I made bad decisions, and I've taken money from companies that I didn't love, and I'm sure you've taken work from companies you're like, I kind of wish I didn't have that one on my resume, or I just never put that one on my resume.
So many.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing, is the weird thing is that like, I don't do advertising right now, but then also, I've made videos for Reebok and like Nike and tons of like really well-established large companies that I wouldn't advertise on the podcast, but I've still taken money from them to make videos.
Yeah.
Is that unethical?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I had to pay the bills.
and I, like, again, I said that earlier, like, I think at a certain point you have to pay the bills, so you do what you have to, but I do think there's a responsibility when you get to a certain place where you don't have to take that money and you don't need to take as much as you're taking, that you can do something like you've been thinking about doing, which is creating I'll take your course on how to create better videos, or how to create story, how to tell a story, just because I like your style and I want to learn from you, and I think that like I resonate with you as a person. And so I think about that a lot of time when I'm watching YouTube videos, especially. I'm like, how can I support this creator so that they can actually get some money for the thing they're doing from someone who's watching, not just from a sponsor or whatever? Because I feel like that's a better impact on them. As opposed to like, all right, X company just gave me money, and I laid my head down at sleep, and like, yeah, I'm glad I have money, but like, wish I didn't have to take money that way. As opposed to, I made a thing, and then I made another thing that supports that, and now people are paying for that. Oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so fulfilled by this. I'm giving value all the time. I'm getting value from customers. It's just like this nice cycle. And that's kind of where I've tried to shift all of my stuff away from all of the advertising, all the companies, everything else, to trying to give value to people and like build a life that actually matters to them. and know that like, okay, I'm getting supported, they're getting supported. Like it's a nice life cycle, not just I'm making money, go look at this thing.
Yeah, I think it builds a deeper connection with that person as well, because then you're continuing to stay in touch with them. They're paying money for something that you created.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot when I made that transition from doing weddings for other people and making videos for other people versus
Filming your own weddings.
Filming, yeah. But like actually like going out and getting clients, and that was a totally different experience because that relationship was stronger between me and them as to where I'm just taking money for a job or taking money for an advertisement. I've got a couple Instagram questions that I want to get to from some aspiring entrepreneurs here.
Cool.
That have questions for you. But before that, I don't want to leave people hanging. You sold your last name a couple times, which is like super weird.
Yeah.
But let's tell that story real quick, and then we'll get into these questions.
So 2012, I get a text message from my mom that says, "Can you hop on Skype?" I had never Skyped with my mom before in my entire life. And I was like, well, this is weird. We didn't live in the same state at the time. And I was like, okay. So I get on Skype and sorry for your listeners. We're going to go to Somber Town again. And my mom's crying on Skype. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on? And she's like, long story made short, I'm getting a divorce from your stepfather. It was my third father at the time. And, it's not a good circumstance. And, just wanted to let you know. And I don't know if anybody can tell listening to this or watching this, like I try and solve things with humor, try and think about that, try and inject humor as much as possible. Even if it's not funny, I just try. And so I just quickly quipped. I was like, well, great. Now I have to, sell my last name so I can get rid of this guy's last name. Cause I was right in the throes of I Wear Your Shirt stuff. So everything was I had sponsored road trips and a sponsored fitness challenge. Just all the things were sponsored. And I was like, oh, I got to sell this too. I was add it to the list. And it made my mom laugh, which was good. And the thought just stuck in my brain. And it was a couple months later, and I remember I was sitting in a Panera Bread, not a Spawn at all. Don't even go there. Not a Spawn. But I was sitting there with my wife and the guy Sean, who was still with me at the time because I'd let everybody else go for my I Wear Your Shirt business. And I was like, guys, I think I'm going to do this last name selling thing. And they were both like, what? And I was like, I've told you about this before. And they're like, well, yeah, but we thought you were kidding. You do crazy stuff, but come on, sell your last name. That's a little too much. And I was like, but is it though? My entire identity has been crafted around this I Wear Your Shirt thing. And this last name that I had before this, it means nothing to me. So I did it. So I bought the domain buymylastname.com, incredibly literal, also available. So no one had done it before, apparently.
Yeah.
And I had a website built for $1,500. It had an eBay style auction system built in. So it would start at $0. And then for 30 days, the auction for my last name existed. I don't know why I did air quotes. Auction, I guess is why I did air quotes.
Was it an auction?
Was it an auction? Yeah. It was. Yeah. And I had the intention when I first started this project, if this made $5,000 or $10,000 and I got some interesting or weird company to sponsor my last name for a year, that was all it was for. It'd be a fun story to tell, and I would get a little bit of cash because we had almost no money coming in. And so we built the website, put it up, and I had a small email list at the time that I kind of built up to get interest for it. It was 600 people. And I emailed this list, and within 24 hours, the bidding was at $33,000.
Wow.
I was shocked. I mean, absolutely just shocked. Again, I thought $5,000 or $10,000, and we just I remember looking at the website and the bidding coming in and going up and up and up, and I'm just laughing looking at this. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Again, you can do anything if you just put something onto reel. You don't get what you don't ask for. And so the bidding ended at $45,500. And funny enough, 3 minutes before the bidding ended, I was getting phone calls from people who were trying to bid of is this legit? Are you a real person? You're going to disappear. And the one call was from the marketing manager of the company who won. He was like, I'm $5,000 over what my boss said I can spend on this. Tell me I'm the last bid. And I was like, I think so. And he was, and that company was headsets.com. And so I was Jason Headsets, DOTCOM spelled out, for a year. And I went down to the courthouse. I stood in front of a judge with a buddy of mine from college who was a lawyer. And I'm in a courtroom and it's divorce and child custody, and then this asshole who's trying to change his name. I'm pointing at myself, not at Matt, who's trying to change his name. And I literally walk up in front of the judge, just like you picture Judge Judy. I'm walking up. It wasn't Judge Judy. And I'm walking up, and this guy pulls a piece of paper over, and he didn't even look up at me. And he's like, "All right, Jason, have you been convicted of any felonies?" I'm I looked at my lawyer you didn't tell me he was going to ask me these questions. And I was like, no, have I? I couldn't even remember the time. I was shocked. No. He was like, are you trying to escape from any creditors or whatever? And I was like, not yet. And he was like, all right, well, this is the first one of these last names, and stamped a piece of paper, and I was legitimately legal JasonHeadsets.com. So I had a driver's license and everything. And I lived with that last name for a year, and like immediately after that, like did a whole news cycle. Was on USA Today's homepage of this story, and it was like such a hilarious and ridiculous thing. And you think about it, and you're like, oh, you sold your last name, like what, But like it didn't matter to me. Like I had no allegiance to my last name whatsoever, and it was just really fun. And so I did it a second time because that was when my book was coming about, and I was like, byline of a book is a good place for a last name. Like it's a very memorable, noticeable thing. So sold it a second time, did a second auction, made $50,000 the second time. So I literally made about $100,000 selling my last name, and nothing in my life really changed. And it was just this fun kind of adventure that I got to do. And I still get emails this day of people like, can I wear a shirt for you? Can you help me sell my last name? And like I always respond to the second one like, I'm not a last name pimp. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just not. Like I can't sell your last name for you.
I think that really comes back to the purple cow, where you're creating ideas that in a lot of ways speak for themselves. And while you had certain things in place and an email list, and you had some stuff to help you that had, you'd built up a reputation at that point, the ideas themselves are so unique and so original that the promotion almost does itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And that's, not to quickly jump over that and jump to something else, because I know I'm dominating the mic here and all the time, but this Buy Our Future project, which I don't know if we were going to get to, but it's fine if we don't. But fast forward to that, I had built 8 products up into that point, a couple software products, a couple online courses, and it's exactly what you just said. Like I had all the experience, I had some audiences, I had some things, and I packaged everything in this idea, this like buy my future. You buy everything that I have, you get everything I create in the future for one price only. And if I had started with that 10 years ago of like, here's the thing, no one would have purchased. I had no experience, I had no notoriety, I had nothing, and I hadn't done the thing. But it's because I had all this experience that then 178 people raised their hand and said, I will spend $1,000 on you, you crazy human being. That's amazing. That's ridiculous to be able to get that. But I get people who email me, ask me about I Wear Your Shirt, about Buy My Last Name, about sponsor, all these things. And they're like, how can I repeat this thing you do? It's like spend 4 years doing it. Like that's what you have to do. You can't just flip these things. I didn't flip these things on. I spent all the years doing all of them to be able to earn the ability to do them. And even in that, they all still took a lot of work, even with the ability to have earned the notoriety and the like respect from people and the attention from people, which is so hard to get these days. But you still have to make the ask. You have to repeat making the ask. You have to follow up, like all these different things. And that's the thread that kind of like weaves through all of this stuff for me, is just continuing to make the ask, continuing to put these weird ideas out into the world, and not being afraid of, hey, if it doesn't work, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'll move on to the next one. I'll create something else that's weird.
And it's never easy.
No, it's actually always hard.
It's always difficult.
Yeah.
There's always things that go wrong.
Absolutely.
It's just part of the game.
Yeah.
That's why you got to hustle.
If you
grind yourself down.
Here you go. If you just hustle through it, then you'll make it. Okay?
Yeah. Just put in the work, and that's all that matters. Yeah. In a way, but kind of.
Why do we? Yeah, actually, truthfully, in a way, a little bit, but. But I think there's an on and off switch for it. I really do. Like my wife and I are in hustle mode for our new business, and we know that it's a grind and we put in so many hours, but eventually it's not going to be. And we talked about that a couple times, that I do think that's important just to kind of come back on, because I think you're in such a similar boat too. Mm-hmm. Like you put in so much time and so much effort, but eventually you get to a place where you're like, okay, I could probably go down to 1 video a week, and it wouldn't matter. And I would get more views than I'd gotten, when I was doing 3 videos a week. But like what I did to get me where I am now is not what I have to keep doing to where I want to go.
Yeah, no, I'm completely in that boat now. And there are definitely days and weeks where I feel like, oh, this feels too much like a grind. But I know that this is kind of a temporary phase. It's like when I was making minimalism. Minimalism was just super grind.
It was, and you didn't know what the finish line was going to be.
There was no guarantees at all. Like it was such an indie project. I was honestly, I had invested about $10,000 to $15,000 in the project. I was like, if I could just make that money back, I would be so happy. That would be amazing. And then I realized after, and then I made more on top of that. I'm like, oh, it's better to make more money because then I can do it again.
Yeah. But you still have to make it. Like that's the thing. Like you have to, as Joshua says, drudge through the drudgery. Like I'll never forget that phrase, because you have to go through that to see even the opportunity that a Netflix is going to pick it up, or even before that, just people are going to pay for it and it's going to make money. And you have to know that I believe in this idea. I believe in this thing that I'm creating. For anybody listening or watching this, whatever it is you're doing, you believe in it enough, and you want that dream or that idea more than you fear the reality of what it takes to get there. Mm-hmm. And the reality is usually just a shitload of work.
Yeah, you put in a lot of work, and then you try to find that balance. And for me, it was finishing that project. It was like, all right, well,
I'm not gonna be in a car with dudes for a long time.
Yeah, right. Like, for like months, just driving around with two dudes in a huge light kit. Like, you realize the things that worked and didn't work about a project, and all right, how can I optimize it? How can I make it a little bit better? How can I actually enjoy the process and live a healthier life during that? And I think that you can certainly do better. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, but then, a month of hard, intense work towards a project can be very fulfilling. It's like running a marathon.
Yeah.
You don't run a marathon every day. Some people do, like Rich Roll, but like,
But he didn't start running a marathon every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you can certainly build up to that and you can become better at it. But I think we do need to ask that question: how much is enough?
Ooh,
yeah, that's cool, right? Little
that was
closure
nice.
on that, and then we'll go to Instagram questions. Let's finish up the podcast with a couple questions here.
Now, are these long answers, short questions? Is that what we're doing, or we're not even there yet?
Yeah, I actually stopped doing quick questions. I didn't stop like for good, but it was I started taking questions on Instagram. I kind of like them better because it's a little bit more diverse and specific questions to...
Your questions were just bad. Just be
honest.
honest.
They were bad, yeah. Well, how do you get through doubt? Boring. This one kind of relates to what we were talking about, but what do you think about all the... this is Darcy Arns from Australia. What do you think about all the wannabe Gary V's of the world?
Oh, man.
The kind of imitations of people who have made a successful platform. We see a lot of people copycatting them.
Thank you for your question, Darcy. All the way from Australia. It's an interesting topic for me because on one hand, I see the value in seeing the success of what someone else has done, applying that to yourself if you don't know who you are or what your secret sauce is or what it is that makes you you, and at least going down a path that you can go down and you can see a way to operate. And that may open other doors for you and you'll find your thing after that. But on the flip side, I think it's a faster path to whatever your metric of success is, which is a lot of personal fulfillment, if you're yourself. Because I've been in a place where I've had the success that similar people have had, and it was not fulfilling at all. And I followed their path and I got whatever level of success that was. And you won't get to Gary Vee's level. Like, I just guarantee you, like, no one who's trying to copy him is going to get what he gets. But it's not going to feel fulfilling because it wasn't yours. It's not your unique thing. Whereas when you do your unique thing, you can have like 100th of the success metrics, but it'll feel so amazing because it's 100% you. So, like, to me, that's when I see anybody copying anybody or following anybody's same, like, visual style or whatever. You got to do your own thing. Because when it succeeds, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, but you know what? I just copied Matt's, like, video thumbnails and, like, his style and, like, the topics he was talking about. And, like, I know deep down, like, they weren't really my original thoughts. And eventually that catches up with you. And I know that from experience because I tried that. I think if people just instead looked at Gary Vee and go, what are a couple things I like about the way that this guy does stuff? By the way, he has 23 people who, like, follow him around every single day. You don't have that. So sorry, it's not going to work out for you. Instead, go, I can do this, and I like these 3 styles of things that he does. I'm going to adapt them into my thing, and now I'm going to move forward with that and see how that goes.
Right. And see if you actually like it, because I think a lot of people that would see Gary Vee's life, it's like, it looks really great and glamorous, but like, when you watch a video and it's all hyped up and there's great music and you know, he's obviously got an amazing energy, that's usually not what people's days are like. Usually it's a lot more boring.
Yeah.
And also, dude, that dude works a lot. He probably doesn't sleep much either.
No.
And I guarantee if you just were put into his body for like a week, you would be so burnt out you wouldn't even enjoy it.
I think if people, and that's why you see, going back to like people who do a vlog for 7 days and then they give up because they don't understand what it takes to do all that. Like, you see the Casey Neistats of the world, like, it's incredible. I did it 889 days in a row. I have firsthand experience. It is not sustainable. You do not have a life with it. And I wanted to ask you, because I think this is an interesting related question to this, but I don't want to skip out on these questions, so I don't care how long we go. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, when you first started your YouTube channel, did you find other people inspiration for the visual style or like the thumbnails or even the topics that you were like, ooh, I'm going to pull from that and make it my own? Or did you just sit down and go, I have some ideas, I'm going to put these out into the world?
It was more, I have ideas and I want to put them out into the world.
Cool.
It was less pulling inspiration from other people because I had been a filmmaker for probably 10 years before that. So
you had a bunch of ideas.
And I had a visual style and a look to my videos anyway. Like, I had developed that over years, where in the very beginning, for sure, I stole from people. And I you know, people who shot back in there was these old forums, I forget what they were called, but it was like just filmmakers sharing footage and that they shot, and like everybody would shoot footage of their backyards. And so then I would just copy other people. I'm like, wow, that's really beautiful how they shot that. I'm going to copy that. Or just getting inspiration from people that I knew and filmmakers that I was close with. and then eventually developing my own style. And then with the YouTube channel, it's been an evolution from, it's been over a year now that I like started to actually heavily start to post stuff. And actually in the beginning, if you actually look at some of the early videos that I started posting, when I had like one video that's like, hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm like starting this thing up. I think there was some inspiration, like the vlogging inspiration. I did a couple vlogging style videos, maybe 2 or 3. And then I, probably inspired by Casey Neistat and others, there was this huge vlogging movement a couple of years ago where everybody was doing it. And I was like, I think I'm pretty interesting. I could try that. And I'm just like, I don't like doing this.
Yeah.
It's not that fun. I could, do it for short stints. Maybe I'll do vacation type stuff every once in a while, or I'll include some vlogging-esque style into some videos. But for the most part, I'm like, this isn't as enjoyable for me. It's really challenging to vlog yourself.
Yeah.
I'm more of like a behind the camera type, I want to be really thoughtful about my shots and plan out how I'm going to make these videos. So that was it for me. It was like, let me focus on my strengths as well, because I'm better when I plan things out. When I say, all right, I'm going to do a video about minimalism and productivity. What are some ways that, that has played a role in my life? What ways has minimalism helped me be more productive and thoughtful? Let me script out this video. Even if I'm doing something on camera, I'll usually at least do a couple bullet points where I'm like, okay, I want to tackle this, this, and this. What do I want to say? Because I'm not a Gary Vee. I'm not a guy that just like goes on camera and just like can have all these inspirational quotable things.
Well, and Gary Vee wasn't Gary Vee.
Yeah.
Like I had him on my live show in 2009. He wasn't that person. He didn't have all the like amazing quips and the thoughts and all these things. But as he's filmed thousands of videos and done thousands of talks, of course he has that stuff now. He just has this Rolodex of things that he says constantly. I have like 3 of them. It's like, you don't get what you don't ask for. Okay, I have 1 of them. And you build those up over time and it becomes easier. I love that answer though from you, because I think it is interesting, because you actually did have the stealing of people's styles way early on before this stuff, and then you adapted your style, and that's why I think your videos stand out, why they're different than other people. All right, we got to get to these other questions.
Cool.
I don't want to
no, we're only going to answer one question.
Damn it.
All right, Robert Brown. What would you say to someone who has an idea and wants to get it started but doesn't have the resources to get it where it needs to be right now? I just graduated with an MA and I have an idea and a prototype and a pitch and even a concept video, but everyone's telling me it's not enough to talk with an investor. How do you cross that uncanny valley?
Man, I went down the investor path a little bit with Ira Your Shirt, and all you're doing when you're getting an investor, unless you're really trying to live in that world, is giving up a part of your dream and giving it away to someone else. And I don't see it anymore. Like for me, it just doesn't make any sense. I think if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build a creative or creativity-based, content-based business, you don't need an investor. But if you're trying to build an app, okay, maybe you need an investor. And in that case, what you need to do is get the app in as many hands of people as possible and get feedback on it and whatever you can do, and then show, hey, there's people who are interested in this, people who are using it. But if it's just like, I don't know, building a prototype and you just need money, I think you have to borrow and scrap from family and friends and anybody that you can't. Don't take on an actual investor. I would just try and do it so that you keep 100% of the control and everything, because otherwise you're just going to give up part of what you are trying to create for yourself and forever. That's just how I look at it. I do see the opposite coin of it, where it's like you could get an investor who has experience in what you're trying to build. They could give you a bunch of value. They could give you some money, and then you kind of share that journey together. I just think that's really, really difficult if you have no track record and you're just getting started. Like, it's almost impossible.
Right. Like just graduating, I would almost suggest figure out a way to make money, whether it's through contracting or freelance work. And I even see one of my old clients, Envision, who's now like they're on, Envision? Yeah, they're on pace to be like $1 billion company. And when I first met them, they were just basically contractors and we're working with other companies to help them figure out how to create design strategy and implement design thinking into their process. And then they created an app simultaneously, like towards the later part of that, and then eventually transition into the app. So like maybe if like you have this great idea, maybe there's something there where you can teach and coach other people about how to do that, make some money, then leverage that money that you make so then you can fund this project yourself. Like I feel like you can't give up control.
Yeah.
I think
people also think investors are a shortcut, and I think what it takes to get an investor, a lot of times that same amount of time could just be put doing exactly what you said, and then you do it yourself, and you didn't lose anything by doing all that stuff. You actually gained a whole bunch of not giving up control going forward.
Yeah, dude, like I think back to very early on, like say just out of college, like $20,000 was so much money that like somebody would be like, wow, if I had $20,000, oh my God, like I could develop this app and do all this stuff. Realistically, $20,000 is not much. Say if somebody was giving you 20 grand as an investment in a company, that's not much money at all. You want to pay a developer full time to like develop an app?
We just spent
Holy shit.
We just spent $10,000 on a developer for a backend for our new project that we're working on called Wandering Aimfully. And I mean, like what he built is almost nothing. And it's amazing to think like that $10,000, it's huge for us, that investment. Like that's a lot of money to invest. Yeah. But like what he built is really not that much in the grand scheme of things. And it's insane how quickly that money goes. So your point is incredibly important of like what you could get and what you have to give up in the beginning. Because if you just have an idea and no track record, nothing's built, you said like someone's going to want 50% for a small amount of money. You just gave up so much when you could make that happen in a scrappy way. Anyway.
Yeah. Let's see here.
I kind of imagine you just making up names. These are just your questions.
Yeah. I got, I was going to make a joke, but I was going to try to think of a name that was very close to Matt Diavella, but not Matt Diavella. Yeah. I got Nat Biavella. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Don Chan. How do you know when it's a good time to take a risk? How do you decide when it's time to quit when things seem like they won't work out? So taking risks and knowing when to give up.
Oof.
Both two very important things to know as a creative.
I think the risk part is when something is nagging at you so much that you can't get it to shut up, it's time to jump on it. Like to me, that's when like I left the 9-to-5 world to start my design firm. It's just kept clawing at me and I had to do it. And that was the same thing with, wanting to write my book. Like I just had this idea, I had this stuff I wanted to do. And like it kept like, all right, I just have to take this risk and I have to do it. And a lot of times I think people really see risks as more risky than they actually are. And it's because they think about like, I have to quit my job and I have to start this thing. No, you don't. You keep working at your job for 6 months, you save up money, you cut back on all your expenses, you build up a buffer. Then when you take that risk, it's much less risky and you actually have something to fall back on. So I'll let you respond on risk as well, and then we can do quitting back and forth if you want.
Yeah, I think it's about calculated risk. It's, for me, going into $100,000 in student loan debt at such a young age and realizing how much that trapped me and how much that weight of that debt was holding me from making and taking risks really changed my perspective to where I'm not, say even like if to take an investor on like that, I would see as a risk. I'm like, well, that's $100,000 I have to pay back. Or if I buy a house, all right, I don't know if that's worth it because then that's going to restrict my freedom and it's going to restrict the risks and the decisions that I can make. Leaving freelance, leaving, a 6-figure plus salary, making a lot of money to make no money was a big risk. To start a podcast is a risk, but I was ready because I calculated that decision and I thought really through it to make sure that I was making the right decision. So it's for me, I think for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. Their threshold for risk is going to be different.
Yeah.
But for me, and just coming from my experience of being in debt, I definitely err on the side of caution, and I'm not going to jump before I have my parachute.
Yeah, well, and I think just touching on the debt thing real quick, because I do want to make sure we talk about his quitting question, but like when we had our $124,000 debt, so we beat you, but I was 2 people, so we kind of cheated.
Yeah,
but
that doesn't count.
Like when we hit that number, it was equally parts scary and also a little bit gratifying that we hit it and like drew a line in the sand, because it was like, I never want to be at this point again. I don't want to feel this way again. I don't want to feel trapped by it again. And so I almost feel like you have to get to some of those points and you can't avoid them because you have to learn that lesson. Because imagine if you didn't have that $100,000 in debt and then all of a sudden you started doing a filmmaking thing, you started making documentaries, you're like, oh, I'll take on investors, take on this. And like now all of a sudden you have $300,000 in debt. You're like, now I have to work my way out of that. I never learned a lesson at a younger, earlier stage of money to be able to avoid it. So I'm almost grateful for the debt that we had, because it's like, I'll never get to that point again, ever in life. And I won't even get close to it because that's how much I learned from that experience.
So let's do that last question.
All right.
That's going to be the last question for the podcast, and then we'll quit the podcast. When do you know when to quit? When do you know when to put an end to things when it's not working?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who, myself included, who think of quitting and failing as the same thing. And I think quitting is something where if you're the person deciding to quit, you are in the driver's seat. You're in control. I think failing a lot of times happens to you. I think quitting is something you choose to do. And so that's kind of how I look at it now, is quitting to me creates an opportunity for something else to exist. So I'm quitting doing the I Wear Your Shirt business. Well, guess what? That just opened up all these doors for now I can create online courses. I can create software. I can create other crazy projects. I didn't have time to do that before. So that quitting actually was beneficial to me. Now, unfortunately, that was also associated with a failure. So it's tough. That quitting feels very difficult to me. But now I feel really empowered that I get the choice to quit projects. You know, like I've made a couple online courses and I've quit them. I've shut them down. I've stopped selling them. They've continued to do fine, but guess what? They took a bunch of time and energy that I didn't want to spend anymore. I wanted to invest that in other things. So I intentionally quit them so I can create space for this other stuff.
I think that's a great place to end this podcast on.
You just want to quit this podcast.
Yeah, that's it. This is the last episode I've ever done. Thank you so much for coming on this show. If people want to hear from you and see what you're up to, where should we send them?
WanderingAimfully.com, I think, is the thing I'll shill here. I'll advertise is this business I'm building with my wife, and you know, right now we're in the phases of building it. We've got this whole behind the scenes thing where you can see everything that it's taken for us to build it, all these posts that we've written about the process, which is really fun. But eventually it'll be a place for intentional creatives, independent creatives who want to build a life for themselves, and they can kind of join this community that we have. And we just love the term Wandering Aimfully. Like, it encapsulates us so well of just this experimentation, but also with purpose and calculation. So yeah, just having a lot of fun doing that.
Awesome, man. Thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And that is a wrap.
We did it. We can take the headphones off now.
And that's the podcast for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to find out more about this podcast, you can go to groundupshow.com. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next week.